All right, let's talk about something pretty much all of us have been through. The move from primary to secondary school. It's this huge, huge milestone, right? It's packed with all kinds of change and emotion, and for kids today, it's an even more demanding journey. But what if the way we as adults think and talk about it is actually, making it harder?
Just take a second and think back. Can you remember that feeling? The kind of crazy mix of excitement for something new, but also that knot of worry sitting right in your stomach? It's a powerful, universal experience. And honestly, it's the perfect place for us to kick off this explainer.
So, the big idea we're digging into today is that our whole framework for understanding this transition might just be broken. The language we use, the way we research it, it might be part of the problem, not the solution. Let's unpack why that is. You see, the trouble starts with the very words we use. Researchers have found that the problem isn't just the stress of the transition itself, it's that the key concepts are all blurry and inconsistent. And think about it. If you can't clearly define a problem, how on earth are you supposed to solve it?
This slide really just lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got emotional well-being, a term that the source material calls decidedly nebulous, which is a fancy way of saying it's super vague. It gets all jumbled up with mental health, but they're not the same thing. And on the other side, you have the transition itself, which we tend to treat as this one single event, like just the first day of school. But it's not. It's a long, drawn-out process. And because these definitions are so fuzzy, we can't see the full picture of what a child is really going through.
And the consequences of this fuzzy thinking, well, they become crystal clear when you look at the research. I mean, these numbers are staggering. When studies on this topic were analyzed, a massive 63% focused on negative stuff, the problems, the worries, the failures. And the positive side, a tiny 2%. We've basically been building this entire narrative of fear around the whole experience.
And look, this isn't just some academic debate. This negative framing has a very real-world impact. It can turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy, creating stress and anxiety for kids and their parents before they even set foot in the new school. We're essentially preloading the whole thing with worry.
So how do we fix this whole mess? Well, the researchers behind our source material decided to go right back to square one. To build a better model, they knew they had to listen. They had to gather evidence from every angle, especially from the people who were actually living through it.
And they were incredibly thorough. First, they analyzed a ton of international studies. Then, they surveyed 30 different experts in the field. And finally, and this is the most important part, they actually sat down and talked with 59 kids who were either about to make the move or had just done it. They made sure to include the most critical voice of all, the child's.
And just listen to this. This one quote from a student completely reframes the entire event. It's not just about a new building or different teachers. For them, it's a huge shift in their identity, a new life. This is exactly the kind of insight that gets lost when we're all stuck in what the research calls adult agendas. Okay, so by pulling together all this incredible data from the literature, from the experts, and of course from the kids, a much clearer, more complete model started to take shape. One that finally sees the whole complex picture.
And here it is. This is the big paradigm shift. The researcher said, hey, let's stop thinking about emotional well-being and school transition as two totally separate things. Instead, we should see them as a single, connected concept. It's a unique emotional journey that's tied directly to this specific life stage. It's all about the new emotions a child has to navigate because of all the new experiences they're facing. So, what does this new concept actually look like in practice? Well, it breaks down into three core parts. First, it's about how a child is feeling right now, that immediate mix of good and bad emotions. Second, it's about how they think they're doing, academically, socially, the whole shebang. And finally, it's about the resources they feel they have in their toolkit, both their own internal coping skills and the external support they get from family and friends.
To make this super clear, let's look at a model case. Meet James. He felt excited. That's that here and now feeling. He knew he had support from his family and friends. That's his perception of his resources. And because of that, he adapted well and now feels happy and relaxed. James is the perfect example of all three parts working together in a really positive way. Now, let's look at the flip side. Meet Thomas. Right from the start, he was worried. He felt totally alone emotionally, especially after losing touch with his best friend. So he felt like he had no external support and that his own internal toolkit wasn't enough to cope. This just powerfully shows what happens when those key attributes of well-being are missing or negative. The result? Struggle and a whole lot of stress.
Okay, so we have a new, clearer definition. That's great. But the real power of this model is that it's not just theory. It gives us a clear roadmap for taking action and providing better, more specific support for kids.
This table just lays it all out so perfectly. On the left, you have the antecedents. That's just a way of saying the things that predict how well a kid will do, like their coping skills and their support systems. And on the right, the consequences, which show us what's really at stake here. Yeah, in the short term, it's about grades and making friends. But look at the long-term outcomes: mental health, life chances, even social equality. This transition, it matters a lot.
And this is where it gets really practical. To put this new model into action, the researchers actually developed a real tool. It's called the Primary Secondary School Transitions Emotional Well-Being Scale, or PS-WELS for short. It's a way to actually measure a child's well-being, specifically in the context of this transition.
And this, right here, is the key takeaway. We can finally move away from just having these vague worries and start identifying specific challenges. With a better definition and a real tool to measure it, schools and parents can spot the kids who are struggling in the moment, understand why they're struggling, and give them the exact support they actually need to thrive.
And that really brings us to the final thought, doesn't it? This isn't just about what researchers or schools can do. It's about how all of us talk about this critical time in a kid's life. Now that we have a better model, how can we consciously shift our own conversations away from that old narrative of fear and anxiety and move toward one of empowerment and support? It's definitely something to think about.